Well, you're picking one statistic, Ben, which is
it's a pretty damning one.
No, well, you're just taking one measure, and that's not the measure we use.
That was Tory MP Kevin Hollinrake, and the Tory government absolutely exposed on child poverty here. Now, Kevin Hollinrake was dealing with a bit of a rarity. Yes, he was being interviewed by a journalist and not a bit of a Tory hack. I'll mention no names. Laura Consberg. Well, LBC's Ben Kentish asked the Shadow Housing Minister about the two-child benefit cap. Well, Kevin Hollinrake tried to basically say that child poverty was nothing to do with the last 14 years of Tory rule and gruel.
The best way to bring people out of poverty is to get people in a job, a better job.
But most of the people who claim child benefit are in jobs already.
Well, yes, and that's why we want those jobs to be better paying, which is why we increased the national living wage and got it to 2/3 of median income, some of the record increases for those people on national living wage.
But in the time you were in government, Mr. Hollinrake, the number of children pushed into relative poverty increased by 600,000.
Well, you're picking one statistic, Ben, which is...
It's a pretty damning one.
No, well, you look at absolute poverty.
You pushed 600,000 more children into poverty over 14 years.
Look at absolute poverty. It's a much better measure, a much more accurate measure.
There's 4 measures for child poverty. 3 of them show that it went up under the Conservatives. You're using the one that went down.
Now, as far as I understand, the 4 measures to assess child poverty are relative poverty, absolute poverty, material deprivation, and persistent poverty. But we'll get to them later. Now, Kevin Hollinrake is now going to demand that we should ignore the fact that under the Tories, 600,000 children fell into poverty. He wants you to look somewhere else, you know.
One thing we did in government, Ben, we got 4.2 million more people in work.
Yeah, but
and we reduced the number of people. No,
the number of people in work and wages.
4.2 million more people in work. 1.2 million fewer people unemployed. What happened since Labour took over? 150,000 less people in work, fewer people in work.
Mr. Hollinrake, you're contradicting yourself because you're saying we put wages up, we got more people into work, and you're also saying that's the best way to lift child poverty. Whereas I'm pointing out to you that yes, you did those things, and at the same time, 600,000 more children were pushed into poverty. So it's not just about work, isn't it?
You're just taking one measure, and that's not the measure we use.
Now, as far as I can tell, under the Conservative rule, absolute poverty worsened during the Conservative government's tenure from 2010 to 2024. And the UK saw its biggest rise in absolute poverty in 30 years, with 12 million people living in absolute poverty by 2023, an increase of 600,000 in just 1 year. Relative poverty also worsened, with 100,000 more children falling into this category in the year leading up to April 2023. Additionally, material deprivation has risen, with 92% of households with young people reporting going without essentials between 2022 and 2023. Also, child poverty increased under 14 years of Conservative rule and gruel as well. Since the Conservatives came to power in 2010, now it's either 700 or 600,000 more children have fallen into poverty. Either one, it's still a damning statistic, isn't it? With 4.3 million children living in poverty as of 2023. So I get the feeling that's basically talking about, material deprivation added with absolute poverty. Maybe that's what they're adding up. So who knows? But yes, according to Kevin Hollinrake, just look at the absolute poverty, because as far as I'm concerned, that's the only one that improved. But from what we can gather, experts do seem to disagree on that, from what I can fathom. And just ignore relative poverty, material deprivation and persistent poverty, because it just doesn't paint us in a good light, does it? But Ben, look at Labour, After 7 or 8 months, this country has gone to hell in a handcart. Skies have turned red. The seas are boiling. It's raining frogs. Cats are now chasing dogs. It's mass hysteria now after slippery Starmer has taken over and destroyed all those wonderful fresh green shoots that Tory government had carefully cultivated over the last 14 years of Tory rule and gruel. So yes, Ben, after Tory austerity policies that implemented deep cuts to welfare spending, including reductions in child benefits and tax credits, these cuts disproportionately affected low-income families, making it harder for them to afford essentials. But just ignore all that, Ben. Also ignore the two-child benefit cap policy that we implemented in 2017 that prevented families from claiming means-tested benefits for a third or additional child. It has been estimated that it affected 1.5 million families, pushing thousands of children into poverty. So take note here. Do the right thing. Also, don't remind people how universal credit led to delays in payments, benefit reductions and increased sanctions, leaving many families struggling financially, and the system's design often resulted in long waiting periods and exacerbating financial hardship. But Ben, forget about the cuts as well to local authorities. That meant councils had fewer resources for social services, including child welfare programmes, housing support and free school meals. This disproportionately impacted children in deprived areas. So yes, Ben, stop reminding voters of the impact of these policies that have been absolutely incredibly severe, with child poverty increasing 5 to 6 times faster in most deprived areas compared to wealthier regions, or as we like to call them, Tory strongholds. You remember when Teacher Shortpants was in Tunbridge Wells that time? Let's be honest, they're just a bit of a joke now. They're not a real party of opposition now. They're just absolute ridiculous. You can't take them seriously anymore, can you? But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. Also, later on today, 5 p.m. today, I'll be speaking to the guys on the Bin podcast, Mikey Famine and Tim Bristol. Absolutely brilliant guys. Absolutely superb channel. So please go over there and subscribe to their channel, and hopefully I'll see you there at 5 o'clock p.m. Also, I've left a link in the description box for you to go over there and subscribe, and hopefully see you then. But up until then, if you want to watch a video of a certain crank called RFK Jr. embarrassing himself, please watch this video here, and I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.